Greetings, everyone. I hope you are well. I am Sister Cece, and this, of course, is PQLR1 Radio, where Yah is first. If you would like to reach us, you can phone us or text at 314-744-9414. Also, reach us on all of the proper social media platforms, which would be Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and also, again, YouTube, and that's PQLR, the number one, radio at gmail.com as well. But PQLR1 radio everywhere. Just look us up. Let us know what you think. All text. Let us know if you have show ideas. Tell us how much you are enjoying the music from the people of Yah. Now, normally we would have entrepreneurs or song artists that we're usually interviewing, but today we have great privilege, great privilege to do an author spotlight. And our author today is April Barnwell. Welcome, April. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Wonderful. So, talk to us about your journey concerning Yah. How has Yah's word changed your life?
Well, if it's like in regards to learning who I am, that actually began way back in elementary school. I actually had teachers that knew who we were as a people way back from third, fourth, and fifth grade. They were white teachers, and I remember like questions coming up about the Khazars in Israel and then who blacks were. And at the time, it didn't mean anything to me because it was just history. And it wouldn't hit me until after I learned who we are, where I was, oh, my teachers taught me this. So like maybe a couple of things that I learned back in fourth and fifth grade. So in fourth grade, I remember it came up about the Jews in Israel. And I guess when it came up that they weren't the true Jews, and the students were questioning why weren't they the true Jews, and the teacher explained that they're actually converts from Khazaria. And that's when students were asking, well,
Sorry,
where is
because
Selena
I have a
Khazaria?
cold, so I'm having like a little sit down in my car because it's nice and hot.
Sorry about that. Go ignore me. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, and the students were questioning, like, where was Selena Khazaria? What was it on the map? And the teacher said, because it was taken off the map. And she showed us where it was. And I remember it very clearly. And she explained to us the history and how they were converts and everything and all about that history. And again, at the time, I didn't really see the significance of that. I just ignored it until like years later. And then in fifth grade, it came up about, and the fact the book, There's No Mystery, Like No History, was actually the first part of that in the classroom is based off what happened with me, where the teacher asked the student, um, where are you from? Like, where do you come from? And I remember the students were saying they came from whatever country was the country of origin. And when it got to me, I was like, oh, I'm from Florida. And she's like, where were you before that point? I'm like, St. Pete. And they were like, where were you before that point? I'm like, the US. And like, no one's from the US. Where were you before that point? And I didn't have an answer. And the students didn't understand why I didn't have an answer for that. And I didn't know what to say. But I remember her also teaching us about in 70 AD, when the Romans invaded Israel, how the Jews fled into Africa. And from there, they were forced to convert to Christianity or Islam, and they were made into slaves. And when the teachers told us that, all the students in the classroom who were white or other races recognized immediately that that Black students were Jews, Hebrews. Everyone except the Black students, including myself. They came up to me in class, says, we know who you are. We know who you are. You're a Hebrew. You're a Jew. And I remember thinking, no, I'm not. I'm African American. And they kept insisting, no, you're Hebrew. You're a Jew. And I remember one of the students being so confused at why the Black students didn't understand that. So he went to the teacher and said, how come they don't know? And the teacher said, well, it's not time for them to know yet.
Mm.
And so again, I didn't really think about that until years later, where the Lord began to do other stuff to show me who we were. And when I finally was, oh, and people, and a lot of us were starting to go into the history, and they were discovering the stuff that I just said, where it hit me. I was taught this. I was taught this in school. And that's only some of what I taught. I was taught a lot more than that. I'm not even sure we even hit on some of the things that I were taught. Like, they taught, see, I remember one teacher teaching how, like, back in like the 1400 whatever, with they were called iconoclasts. And they stick into my mind because he told me that these were people who destroyed things. And I think what he was saying that they were destroying our things, and only a few things were left. And I think they were taken to the Vatican or something and all. And how I remember, like, she taught about whitewashing, how they whitewashed the pictures. She was very specific. How there, I think there's two forms where either they painted over the pictures to whitewash them, and those pictures you're able to peel through the paint to see it, or they repainted the pictures to be white and all. And I remember not understanding that at the time because I remember reading Tom Sawyer. And I remember my dad gave me that book. The first thing you read is how Tom whitewashed the fences. And my dad explained to me, oh, he painted the fences white. So when the teachers talked about whitewashing, I didn't quite understand what she was like getting at. So that's like some of the story how like you start to like how Heavenly Father started to show me who I was, but he began way back when I was a child.
Mhm. Well, you know what? That's amazing what you just said. First of all praises to the Most High Yah for reaching you as a young child, because the information that you got was the seed planted. You didn't quite understand it as a child, but now as an adult, it's fully manifesting and you can actually appreciate where he has carried you. And I always say that it's like, I was just thinking about this last week. Oftentimes when we see the degradation in our neighborhood or even things that have gone on in our own families, we'll say, nobody taught me how to blank, whatever it is, raise children, how to be a mother, how to be a wife, how to do this, how to do that. We'll say we hadn't learned these things, but, I'm always one trying to look to make sure that I'm not making myself a victim, because I think that we are victors. We are victorious, of course, if we have been made new creatures in Christ, in Yahusha. So I'm always looking for ways to make sure that I'm not a victim, because this world sets you up to be a victim. So I thought, like, wow, we say that a lot. Nobody taught us this, or our parents were like this. And I thought back to exactly what you said. I was like, I did have people teaching me this the whole time. But the question is, did I understand or was I not paying attention? What was going on? Because clearly the lessons and the teaching was always there. It was always there. So that's amazing that you said that. Now, as you progressed, you had these teachers, what, in elementary school? What was happening when you went to middle school? Was the information starting to process even more?
Um, no, not in middle school. I did have things that were taught in high school. A lot of it's kind of like blurred because I was taught things from like elementary to high school. And mind you, I grew up as a military brat. My dad was in the military. I traveled. So what I just taught you, I told you I learned in Alaska when I was living there in elementary school. When I got into high school,
Wait, hold on.
I
I'm
will
from
learn a little
Alaska.
bit more about who we are. And that was like about the Indians.
Uh-huh.
And I think um part of it I think is high school and some of it was college because or maybe it was some of that was in elementary school too, because I know there's conflict with like the Hebrew Israelites and then the group that's nowhere originally Indians.
Mhm.
And I was taught both.
Right.
I was taught that Indians were black. There were two groups, there were the Asiatic and there was the Negro Indians. I was taught that the Indians were made slaves. And I was taught there was a lot I was taught about Indians and everything. And that kind of led me to a group like I think they're also probably Hebrew because my teacher taught that very thoroughly. I'm gonna go into details about that and everything, but I was taught both the history about the blacks and the Hebrews. I was taught who came in when because there were see I was taught the history that there were white slaves, Indian slaves, and African slaves, which came in last. I
Mhm.
was taught like it very thoroughly. And
Mhm.
then I remember when I was in college, I was taught from one of my professors, he was African American. Little things that stuck in my mind that made me think, like, wait a minute, what was he trying to say? And he was teaching how, like, when the blacks were enslaved in America, at the time there was I guess the blacks were already slaves, and there was the white Jews were established. and that the black slaves expected the white Jews to help them because they taught them what they knew, but
Mm-hmm.
they were betrayed by these people who then took over their heritage.
Mm-hmm.
And I was taught this in college
Mm-hmm.
by a professor. And I
Mm-hmm.
was like, at the time, it didn't mean anything. But then it hit me, wait a minute. This professor is basically saying that the blacks were Jews.
Mm-hmm.
And then in college from a professor, I'm trying to remember because there was something I was taught in college with a professor. Oh yeah, that the whites that were in America blamed the blacks for the killing of Jesus, whatever. So they were saying it's your fault that the blacks that Jesus died and everything. Again, that was what he was saying. It was acknowledging that the black Hebrews were the Jews of the Bible. So you had like all these things from like people of different cultures pretty much acknowledging who we were. And I didn't catch it at the time,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
you
Now
know.
let me backtrack a little bit because I was uh butting in a bit, but I'm actually from Alaska as well. So that's where I could say some of my discovery happened too, because there are a lot of military families that, of course, migrate to Alaska and they end up staying. So I had a lot of black teachers, whereas you would think, oh, okay, no, Alaska, there's no black people. That's what people always think. But I actually had a lot of black teachers in elementary school, and they were very nurturing and informational. I'll just put it like that. It wasn't until later on things became a little disconnected, because, of course, we aren't generally taught anything about who we are. It does start right there, like you were saying. It's basically at the slavery account. Now, I was going to ask you that too, because as I was reading the book, it just kind of felt very close to home, like this was your story concerning, this classroom setting, because in the classroom, everybody else could kind of identify where they come from. But then when it came to black people, we just were kind of complacent and like, oh, I'm from America, you know, and no, that they want you to be able to run down actually what is your real history because they know where they come from, but then we don't. And what I have found is, um, they don't have to really know things, but I think sometimes these teachers, they play stupid, or they don't really know and hadn't thought about it, or they absolutely do know. I mean, there's just like three platforms that they come from. But as I was reading the book, I just really felt that you really connected to that information. And that's probably where the dialogue came from in the beginning of the book. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, I based the story, that's a part of it based on what you went through.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Mm-hmm.
you really did like go through that experience. And it was just awkward because like everyone seemed to know except me. And they're like confused, why don't you know? And I would run into this several times actually before the Lord showed me who we were. I had like even Jewish people ask me, where are you from? And I would give it the same answer, Florida, St. Pete, America. Like, no, where are you from before that point? When I tell them I don't know, they get angry at me. I'm like, well, we're African Americans. We were taken here. We don't know where our roots come from. But I've had that several times where they would get angry at me for not knowing.
Right. That's so crazy. That's so crazy because again, they act like they don't know. They act like they don't know the history, or they don't. I keep saying they don't have to know. Anytime we are in a spotlight and we wonder why people don't have certain compassion for us, I just always say they don't have to know. It's not their personal struggle. They can know as far as I'll say, like the hand of philanthropy. Oh, okay, let me throw some money at this. Or let me give, let me do some volunteer work for these poor black people or whatever. But they really don't have to understand the struggle. Why? Because it's not their struggle and they have created the struggle. We can see it all throughout history, even today. We can see it. And I'll just kind of go kind of fast forward. Uh, of course, we know that it is intentional that we are kept in poverty. and not just financial poverty, but impoverished mindsets. It is intentional. You can see it all around us. You can see what is being done and what's not being done. And a big example of financial poverty is every time somebody talks about some reparations, but we know they could never repay us back. They can't repay us back. There's no way that they could, because one, we don't even know everything that they've done. Only Yah does. But anytime somebody talks about reparations or paying us back, they want to hem and a haw about any sort of dollar amount that should be earmarked toward us. But then when it comes to other people, refugees of other countries, people coming over here, not the black ones, but people coming over here from the Ukraine and all of that stuff, Koreans, all these people, they are really, really taken care of when they come over here. They bring them over here to take care of them. But when it comes to us, it is about siphoning anything that would be profitable to us from us. That's what I found.
Yeah.
But fast forwarding to the book. So you have, before we talk about this book, there's no mystery, like no history. There's no mystery like no history. So this book came across my desk. It was kind of random. I had it sent to me, and then you sent me another one. Tell me how you went about actually putting this book together, because it's quite animated. It's got a lot of illustrations of animations, but then when you go through it and it's talking about Black people that have invented things, it's quite detailed. So tell me how you went about putting it all together.
All right, so when I wrote the book, I originally wanted to use it almost like an evangelism tool, because once I understood, like learned who we were and all, which like I said came much later, I was like, oh, I need to go tell young people this. I need to go to the like, the children and the youth and the teens. But I realized, gee, I don't really know anything about our history. I don't have any proof. I don't have any evidence, everything. And what do I tell them? Because this is almost like kind of random for them, considering what we were taught versus who we actually are. And so I realized, okay, I need to figure out how to reach them. And I thought, okay, maybe I should write a book, which would force me to like go and research stuff, figure out how to like show young people who we are, give them a sense of pride, give them history, and then show them like this is where we actually came from. And so I had structured the book to be written at least in a series of three, maybe four. And the first book was basically just to introduce, show some of the accomplishments. So like, start to bring up questions for them to think about and everything. And so I wanted to keep the first book relatively like simple and just kind of like give like the basics of like, where you're gonna start leading to. Now, the second book, I was gonna have focusing on like African American, the community, the system that we're in, the racism, and even like our sins. So I want to highlight like, this is the situation that we're in right now and everything. And this is the nation that we're in, how it oppresses us and all. And then go on to like, begin to show like the division of the nation of African Americans and such. And then the third book was going to go into like the group was going to go into researching the different perspectives that we have as Blacks. Like there's groups that think that we're Indians. Some think we're into Egyptology. Some think that we're the Hebrews, Israel, whatever. Other things that like, we're Africans. And so I wanted to start to bring into that kind of thought, but then also begin to show you the history starting from, I was going to go like backwards in history, starting like, from the present to like civil rights area, and then before 1400s, which is what we don't get. I was going to start having the researchers go into all that part because we're not told that history. And again, like I was shown that in my elementary school, I was shown that history, but I know a lot of young people were not. And so you're going to start to backtrack to again getting them to question, getting to see like where we come from, where we were, the places like Negro Land, the Moors and all that. That was another one. We have a lot of people say that we were Moors, but it's like showing all those stuff and where this came from in history, and then backtrack to like who we are, like the children of Judah or whatever. And so you had it structured in that kind of manner to try to show young people and get them to question and see where we are and begin to like, but I realized that like when I wrote the book too, like I really did think that we have to be strategic in getting out who we are. And one of the most powerful ways to bring about that is to reach the youth. I mean, everyone else does. You have like the LGBTQ ABC community that went to preschoolers, which is a whole nother story.
Oh,
But
yeah.
like we're not, I feel like we're not going hard at the youth. And to me, I know the impact that has that once you got it established in young people, their voices will ring loud. And it will ring so loud that even the adults that ignore this will have to listen. And I know this because I've worked with youth. I worked from middle school. I'm an activist. So I have to say that because that's just how all my books are, because I am an activist. I've done it, I've been up there with the streets with the young people with the signs and protesting, kind of like that kind of stuff. Um, and I've seen how other groups work, and I've seen the impact that they have. When I was in college, I was actually at a college that was actually 99.999% white and 1% minority, all minorities. I remember there was a student group called Square. There were immigrants, and that group started off with just 5 students, and it grew nationwide to millions of people who've had an impact on the government. And I watched them grow from people being in a group that no one cared about, people were angry about, didn't like, but they fought hard to persuade people on their perspective. I remember they at my college, we have like a year conference where students and people from over can come and speak on different issues. And they decided to speak on their issue on immigration. And they had like the biggest controversy, but they had the most students. And they had to extend it for a day, another day, because it was so big. But they ended up persuading many students. And eventually I watched that small group of people grow to millions of people because they were persistent. I went to, like, I call them training camps where they taught the young people how to mobilize, how to get groups together, how to make change. They made them call 5 people there to tell them about the movement. They made them come together in the groups according to their city, because they were nationwide, plan out what they're going to do and make them execute it right then and there, and then carry it out. Like they were that persistent to make sure that they could get their message to grow. And they did. And so you saw like and that's just some of what I saw. I saw a whole lot more. So I'm thinking like as a group, thinking, wow, if you can do that, have that, if we as a people have that same unity and that same force to get out the message of this is our identity and get it established in young people, I know that changes things. And I know that reaches even the greater public that refuses to hear. And so you want it to begin to, I want it to begin that. Like we have to reach the youth. Once it's established, once you get them speaking in colleges where they're surrounded by all these people and you got their voices loud, like they're out there loud, you start to get heard and people will start to have to hear it and have to start to think about it. And when you teach them, when you give them all the evidence, all the proof, everything they need to establish their point, people can't dispute it anymore and their voices go loud. And so in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, we have to reach the youth. In my books, I've established a purposely to start that process to get to young people. And to me, the younger, the better. But if you get the high school and college, you get it faster. But if you can't get the older students, get the younger. And once they get to a certain age, they will be able to go out there and speak it.
Mm.
So I had aim and a target for and a purpose for writing these books, and that was the very precise purpose, was to begin to start that process, to get it fired up in young people.
Wow, that is so amazing, and that's important. That's important work that you're talking about.
I
Because
mean, when you read the Bible, it says that, train the youth in a way they should go and they will not depart from it. And when you look at everything in this nation, they always focus on the youth. They don't even care about the adults or the elderly because they understand that once they're established in their ways, they're hard to change. But if you change it in the young people, they know that by the time those young people reach a certain age, it's established. And me being an activist, I've been at college campuses talking to students, I honestly, about abortion. I have found that college students, something happens between high school and college. In high school, opinions are still being formed. They don't really have a full opinion. They're listening to ideas.
Mhm.
But by the time they graduate, their opinions are established. So by the time you get to college, it's actually harder to change their mind on something. And so when you start to get to college students, They know why they know what their views are, they know why they feel the way they do, and you have to work to talk with them on those issues. Whereas high school, they're easier to persuade. And so you see firsthand, like, wow, okay, so it has an impact that if you start to reach some people early and get them established before college, it's established by that point. And so to me, it's like crucial, like, okay, well, then we have to go and reach these young people, knowing that those things will stand. So when we get to like things like LGBTQ, and they started as young as preschool, I know from what I've seen that by the time they get to college, if they're in favor of that and they're taught it, it's established in college and it's harder to persuade them otherwise. That's why the government aims for young people because they know the power of it and what they're doing. And so again, like thinking in terms of being strategic is like, okay, well, then we need to aim for young people. I'm not to say not to stop doing with like older people, but knowing the power of establishing what we're trying to bring forth in the youth, because you know that they will carry it forth very strongly and vigorously.
That is so important what you're saying. What we're going to do is we're going to take a pause, a break really quick, and then we're going to come right back. Again, you're listening to PQLR1 Radio, where Yah is first. We're talking to our sister April, and she has 3 books that we are definitely promoting today, and we will make sure that you know about them soon. But we are going to take a quick break again.
As for me and my house, we serve the Ancient of Days, the beginning and the end, the Creator, the Deliverer, the Eternal One, the first and the last, the only good one, the Holy One, the I Am that I am, the Judge of all, the King above all kings, the Life Giver, the Most High, the Near One, the Original One, the Preeminent One, the only one we're quoting, the Redeemer, the Savior, the Terrible One, the Unstoppable One, the Voice of many waters, the Wellspring of wisdom, the X Factor, the Yoke Remover, the Zenith of all things. So who do you and your household serve?
Okay, everyone, we are back again. I'm your sister Cece, and you are listening to PQLR1 Radio, where Yah is first. Today, we are talking with our sister April Barnwell. And what has brought us here is the book that I received from her a while back. It's called There's No Mystery Like No History. And it's dealing with the history of our people that have come to this country here. Of course, it was not by choice. And I'd like to highlight in the book, it's a great book. If you are a homeschooler, I'm telling you, it is chock full of information. And as the sister was talking about before, we got to reach the young people, got to reach the youth, because if we start there, we will make some progress. I mean, like she said too, doesn't mean we don't continue to talk to the older people or just, everybody else. But we've got to plant that seed in the youth, because as she was telling us before, Yah imparted into her by way of school, regular school, that she actually learned who we are. And what kind of phenomenon is that, really? Because when you think about school or the school system that we have been so traumatized by, you don't think that you'll learn anything of value concerning your heritage, your history, and who you are. But she was able to be in a place, in the right place at the right time, to where Yah allowed the information to go forth. And in her book, There's No Mystery Like No History here, we've got some male inventors and the inventions and the improvements. We've got Andrew Beard. He made the automatic railroad car coupler. William Purvis, the fountain pen, closed circuit, electric railway system. Thomas L. Jennings, he invented dry cleaning. Garrett Morgan, the traffic signal. Thomas J. Martin, the fire extinguisher. John Burr, the lawnmower. Jonathan Smith, the lawn sprinkler. And let's not leave out Robert F. Fleming Jr., he invented the guitar. Now, there's a long list of our Hebrew ancestry here. And then if you move over, we also see the female inventors. We've got Alice H. Parker. She made the heating furnace. Sister Rosetta Tharpe. She was a rock and roll legend. I did see her on YouTube. We got Valerie Thomas. She is an illusion transmitter. Mary and Albert Van Britten Brown home security system, early closed circuit television system. We got Dr. Patricia Bath, laser phaco probe, which removes cataracts from the eyes. Wow. Dr. Betty Wright Harris, sensitive spot test, detects the presence of TATB. Jane Cook Wright, drug methotrexate, treats breast and skin cancer. Wow. And then when you look over to the left, there's a picture of hair care products, and highlight is Madam C.J. Walker. She was a self-made millionaire for hair care products. And I've got to mention that Madam C.J. Walker actually learned from the elder sister Annie Malone, who was right here out of St. Louis, Missouri. She taught many out of her Puro, I believe it's called Puro Beauty School, and she taught many to go out and sell product door to door. She was, I believe, probably the first Black female millionaire. I believe that's what it's slated as in this country, I believe. But Madam C.J. Walker actually learned from her. So shout out to our ancestors here. I mean, not that they can hear us, but all of the improvements and all of the inventions that they've made. Welcome back, Sister April. Welcome back. And we are talking about your book, There's No Mystery, Like No History, and how important it is to teach the youth. And I think that you're right, because when we look at the activism in the world today, like, who do we see at the forefront right now? We saw what, Greta Thunberg, and they're really using her as a tool, don't you think?
I can't say much. Haven't been keeping up on that, so I've
Well,
been
yeah, but
so
you
busy.
know who she is, right?
Say it again. I didn't catch it.
Have you heard of Greta Thunberg?
I probably heard some about her, but I can also say that I haven't been keeping up, so I can't really say that I do.
Okay, well, that is not a problem. That's actually a good thing. But they have an activist named Greta Thunberg, and she's talking about climate control and all of those different things.
Oh, wait, her.
Yeah, her. Uh-huh.
Yes, I've heard about her. I don't know a lot about her, but I've heard about her.
Right, right. Well, it's been unveiled that she's actually not even a child. Like, she's a grown woman, like really grown woman. But they have used her face as a youthful face to get to the youth. So all I'm saying is I definitely agree with what you're saying and how we have to reach the youth. Now, why don't you talk about the other books that you have that are available? And we should probably let everyone know how they can get a hold of all three books.
All right, so the first one is Yate and the Purple Potato. That was the first book I had illustrated, and it's just about a young girl who's gardening, and she was given a purple potato as a gift, and her journey and having to learn how to wait for it to grow. So yeah, that's a little children's book.
Mhm.
The next one is The Flower Garden. So the flower garden I wrote, I had that story in mind that I learned thought about that story at least 10 to 15 years ago. And it was inspired because little girls were calling each other ugly all the time.
Hmm.
And I got so bothersome because they seemed to already be attacking each other since at 6 or 7 in the area of beauty. I think even younger than I think it was even 4 or 5. They're already attacking each other in beauty. Oh, she's ugly. And it bothered me thinking, how are these girls learning? How do these girls learn this? And I wanted to figure out a way to show them the beauty in everybody. And the only way I can think of was flowers. Like, you have all these different kind of flowers. They all look different, have different styles, but they're all beautiful in a different way.
Hmm.
And so I wrote that book. That was my original idea of writing that book. Now, when I actually started to write it, other things came out. Like I started, I think you I address things like not only just beauty, but also herd mentality, standards that nations put on, like like standard of beauty is blonde hair, blue eye, But if that's standard of beauty, then what do you call everybody else? Or how
Right.
people will just follow along with what one establishes instead of thinking for themselves. I established transgenderism came up in my mind. When I wrote that book, I think I was thinking a lot about transgenderism. And this is where I have like the flowers. It starts out talking about the flower garden, but then it goes into the flowers being angry at the rose being seen as the most beautiful flower. So it had they discuss on what to do about this, and they decide to mutilate themselves. They try to become like the rose, but in the end, they end up destroying themselves. And the only flower that's left standing chose not to do that. And so I want to show like one, not changing yourself from how God originally made you, and two, like, and that was addressing also like, things like changing things like your body for like beauty standards like Botox or bigger butts or bigger lips or trying to change your hair, whatever. It's trying to show like, no matter what you do, you're beautiful as you are. Everyone's made to be different. And that was also addressing the issues of transgenderism, how like when you try to change into something that you're not really changing that, you're mutilating yourself, which is essentially more damaging to you, whatever. And so there's actually a lot of issues I put into that book, and I use flowers to do it. I don't know if I explained that very well or not, but that was like all in my mind when I wrote that book.
No, no, no.
Um,
You did it quite well. And the thing is, when you can use something so simplistic yet so elaborate as flowers, I think uh, that the goal is quite evident. Children will definitely understand that. And
I-
think about the topic as a whole, we can see way back when where the beauty standards are installed into the minds of children. When you think about what's been like the doll study, I'm sure you've seen the doll study.
yeah, I've seen that study.
The doll study, and then you have the paper bag test.
I've heard about that one and the blue vein test.
I didn't know about the blue veins.
Yeah, there was the paper bag one, but there was also the blue veins. It was with like octoroons
Mm.
that your skin had to be white enough that you could see the blue veins through your skin.
Oh my God, never heard of that one. That's sad. That's really sad. It's terrible. And the thing is, man, the color thing is just so, I don't even know what to call it, because we've got where, I mean, I just remember growing up, if you were dark skinned, that was uh, like a sin. Like you had like a black mark on your head, literally, if you were dark skinned. Um, if you were light skinned, I don't, yeah, there was some favor there if you were lighter skinned. If you're a regular brown, you're just regular brown. And it's just so strange how, I don't know how to explain it, but the people who are light skinned or lighter skinned that we think are so favored, they too struggle. They still struggle. So you got to struggle with people being too light, then you got to struggle with people being too dark. So how is it that we can actually be comfortable in whatever skin that we're in? Even today, there's those issues. How do we break down those beauty standards? What do you think?
Well, I've actually planned on addressing that in my second book with the No Mystery Like No History one. Because I'm like, I'm done with this issue. We need to address these issues and come to terms with it. And so again, I think that starts with young people and us retraining and re-looking at things the right way. Because I think we're made to see things a certain way. We have to learn how to recognize it for what it is and correct it. I remember when I was really, really young, like between 2, 3, or 4, I did have issues with my skin being dark. But to my understanding, it was because I could sense that there was an issue with that in the nation. And that kind of understanding that you, as a child, you understand that something's wrong, it has to do with your skin color, and it causes you to hate your skin color. I think that, yeah, I think it begins with recognizing that something about the nation puts you at the bottom. But I also know that as I got older, and it was still in elementary school, I recognized it for what it is, thinking, wait a minute, this isn't right. I'm not ugly or this or that because of my skin color. This is wrong. And I know, like, when I was in like kindergarten, first grade, I remember I did kind of feel ashamed of those who were very, very dark. But then I realized, wait, this is wrong. Why do I feel this way?
Mm-hmm.
And then I began to correct that in elementary school and all. And so it begins with recognizing it, understanding that this is not true, and then begin to correct it. But part of that is also, I think, is being seen the beauty in dark-skinned people. There's this one video, I have to figure out what she is. She's really beautiful. She's from Uganda, very dark skin, but she is very beautiful. And I want to put her picture in my next book, but I want to be able to show people like the beauty of dark-skinned people. Like it's not ugly. Some of the most beautiful people in the world are very beautiful. Oh, her name is Angela Summer Mubaru or something like that. She's on YouTube, but she's dark-skinned, Afro textured hair, shows the beauty in dark-skinned people. And I think we need to see that more. We need to actually, as a people, represent ourselves and show our beauty. I think we depend too much on everyone else doing something that is our responsibility. And so one of the things I do want to encourage, again, with young people is stop depending on the people to do something for us. We're the ones that do it. We can establish our own standards, our own businesses, our own reputations, our own representation of what we want to be seen as. And I think that we're failing to do that to the degree we ought to be doing it.
Right. We need to establish our own self-worth. And yeah, of course.
Yeah. And when young people see this and they see more of us doing that, that eventually will have an influence in them and they will strive to be the same. So if they're not doing that, I feel like that's more of a reflection of our lack of representing it and doing it than it is on the fact that we're depending on the world to do it. And so I think the more of us that begin to display ourselves in that manner, the young people have someone to look up to, and they will strive to do the same. They will no longer look down at themselves, and then we can start to rebuild our image, rebuild our representation, rebuild who we are. So it's more like us coming together, unifying, and making the changes ourselves, and stop worrying about the world trying to do it for us.
Right, right. And you know, the thing is this, the world will find something wrong with you no matter what you look like. Even if you are this cookie cutter, blonde hair, blue eyed, blue blood, whatever. Yeah, because we see a lot of people who are in that status committing suicide. So there's still an image problem there because we have to establish our image in our Heavenly Father. But then when you look at what the industry does to just people in general. Like you look at who they promote. I saw I do some volunteer work where I read for the visually impaired, and I was just showing my husband the other day. They were promoting a model, and she actually had vitiligo. So of course, you know, she's a Black woman, and she's very beautiful. But they have, you know, put her out there as a model, and she didn't have any clothes on. And they wanted to make sure that you saw that she was different and she had vitiligo all over her body. So, whereas in elementary school or wherever she came from, I'm quite sure people made fun of her. But now they have promoted her, and now probably everybody wants to idolize her. It's
uh-huh. I was going to say that I think something that young people do need to be exposed to is people who are different. I remember, like, as a child, my mom had friends who worked in places where there were disabled people or people with special needs or who were different from the normal people. And when you go on that first time, it's like really strange, but because you're exposed to it and you see others treating them like normal people with respect and everything, it carries on into yourself. My dad even had me when I was working for the Special Olympics, you know, people again who are different than the norm and everything. So when I got into places like middle school and high school, well, especially middle school, I began to notice that young children were treating those in wheelchairs or those who were foster children differently and less than. But when my mind's like, oh, they're normal people, and I would go up and talk with them and want them to be my friend, and some of them looked at me as though I was strange. Like, why would you talk to this person? I'm like, why shouldn't I? I want her to be my friend.
right.
And I think that when doing that, it causes others to think about the fact, oh, this is a normal person. But because they're not exposed to them, or they see people or whatever the case may be, that's what causes them to look down. And again, so I think a lot of things have to be established as young children, that they have to be taught, oh, you have different people of different colors, they're all beautiful, don't look, or whatever. Or there's different people with different needs, you don't look down at them, they treat them respectfully. That is something that is taught in young people. And I know it was taught in me because I don't see people who are different as different. To me, it's like, oh, of course, that's a person, that's a human being to be respected. And I know it's because it was instilled in me as a child.
Right, right. And that's also another bonus of being raised, I would say in Alaska, because I had that same experience. I was raised around a great, diverse bunch of people. And I'm thankful to that, or for that to this day. I'm very thankful. And I can say that everybody doesn't get that same experience. And I can
Yeah.
see it at the park. Like, for instance, I take my granddaughter to the park, and we're excited if we see people that look like us because the other children are oftentimes just all Caucasian and they do not want to play. And it is because they do see a difference. And I believe that they are taught a difference. I believe that they are taught a difference in their homes. I mean, of course, nobody's quote colorblind. Yes, they do see a difference, but when children are children, they just play you know. But when you are raised and brought up around a great diversity of different, colors and just different abilities of children, then you're a child and you play, but we don't really see that. Now, another thing that I wanted to mention too, we talked about the woman with the vitiligo and how they are, she's a model now. They do the same with people who are suffering from albinism. And we know that people that have albinism are being killed in Tanzania. They get their limbs chopped off actually because they are considered like cursed and witchcraft and all this other stuff. So they chop off the people's limbs. But if you are here in the United States, I have seen where people who are suffering from albinism are actually models. So it's very strange how, the world just does these different things. As a child, you're considered an abomination, but then when you grow up because of your difference, oftentimes they will promote you so they can exploit you, really. They'll promote you so they can exploit you and make you a model or something because of your difference. It's just very strange.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
I
So,
do have one more book that will be out probably in the next couple of weeks, hopefully.
uh-huh.
And it's called The Purple Crayon. I'll try to make a trailer of that book.
Okay.
But that book is straight up about transgenderism.
Oh,
Um, it's for children, it's for little children. But I wrote it specifically of it. This was also done like at least before COVID, 2 to 3 years before COVID. And I was seeing how like transgenderism was like prevailing. I was seeing little boys, even especially in the Black community. Like I've seen little elementary school boys with earrings and you can't even tell if they're male or female.
hmm.
Then there was that jazz boy who went out there. I'm like, oh my goodness, what they're doing with that, they're going to really promote transgenderism. And then the fact that if I was born in this day and age, I will be considered transgender. And the reason for that is because as a child, I remember my mom taking me to her friend's house and then for her to babysit and then telling her, be careful, she's different. Halfway through the day, my mom's friend would come to me and says, your mom's right, you are different. And at the end of the day, she'd go to my mom and say, you're right, she is different. It was because I didn't like girl things. I like boy things. I like the boy toys, boy activities. And it wasn't so much as that, it's like the boy things were more got you to think more and do things more. Whereas the things that they gave to girls required, I didn't really care for them. I wanted to actually do something that was active, productive, that was science, whatever.
Cause you to figure things out.
Yeah,
Hmm.
exactly.
Hmm.
And so I prefer both. And I like physical activities. I like to play with the toy guns, and they didn't think girls should play with that. I wanted to run around. I love games that were like tag and chasing, but I hated boys get chase girls. There were some games I found degrading. Others I like, and this is other elementary school girl. So I wasn't a feminist or anything. I was my actual self.
Hmm.
And there was just things I just didn't like or what I preferred. And so I'm thinking, oh dear, if I was born in this generation, they would have deemed me a transgender.
Yeah,
And yes,
because
I
back then
did.
it was called a tomboy and there was no big deal about it. Like, okay, I
Yeah.
like to play in the dirt and the mud and I like to climb trees. I'm a tomboy. But today you would be called a trans something. Yes.
Yeah, and then they took it too far because now they're having little children mutilate themselves. I'm thinking, wait a minute, this is wrong. And if the children change their mind all the time, just
Mhm,
because they feel this way at 5 doesn't mean they'll think that way at 10, at 15, and at 20. But
mhm,
you're making children change their mind before they can even change. I was a tomboy for years through
mhm,
high school. I
mhm.
am not anymore.
Uh-huh.
And so if I had made decisions that children are making today, it would have been a tragic thing. And I'm
Oh,
like, I have to do something about this and get into the minds of these children that this is wrong.
uh-huh,
So a quick story. I babysit a llama nanny, and I was a nanny for a little boy and a little girl,
mhm,
age 4 and 2. We
mhm,
were watching a movie, Horton Hears a Who, that was just a Dr. Seuss movie.
uh-huh,
And halfway through the movie, the little boy stopped and told me, so a baby is a baby no matter how small. And it shocked me because I mentioned nothing about abortion or baby or killing or any kind of stuff.
uh-huh,
But the boy got that off the movie. And to be honest with you, that's what I got from the movie too, thinking, wow, they're talking about a baby being a baby despite the size of it all. But this young 4-year-old understood that. And so
mhm,
it got me thinking, wow, so if a child can understand that message without you saying anything about the issues at hand from
mhm,
the simple movie like this, can that be done for other issues? And so with Purple Crayon, I actually wrote a different story with that was addressing transgenderism for children. That was like really carefully made. I like spent like months working on it, and then my manuscript disappeared. It vanished, and I'm
wow.
like, oh my goodness, what happened to it? Like I can't find it anywhere. It just disappeared. Can't find a trace of it all. And I
Mhm,
got so distressed by that, like so upset that my and I couldn't even I didn't save it, and I couldn't remember what I wrote because and yeah that I decided I wasn't going to do another, but I decided I have to do something, and I scribbled Purple Crayon. It
mm,
was a very fast one. It was very easy to write very quickly, but I had to find something, another way to address the issue that was simple.
mhm,
And so it's basically about a little boy named Bobby, where he's coloring a picture and he has a purple crayon, and he wonders if he takes the wrapper off the purple crayon and put a different color wrapper on the crayon, will it change the color of the crayon?
mm,
And so he goes through several crayon wrappers and he puts it on the purple crayon and then he draws a picture and then he sees what it brings forth or whatever. And then he draws a second picture with the right wrapper with the right crayon. And yeah. So um that one is coming out in the next I having someone edit it. And once it's done being edited, then I'll have it published and it should be out within hopefully a couple weeks.
okay. Well,
Yeah.
okay, so let's name the book. So we've got There Is No Mystery Like No History. Okay, and the other book is
There's Yate in the purple potato
okay.
or the purple vine.
Uh-huh,
There's the flower garden,
uh-huh.
and then there's the purple crayon.
Okay, okay, and they'll be able
Yeah.
to find all of these on your website. So let the listeners know what the web address is.
All right. Yeah. Let me hold on a second. I think I have it in the chat. I'm putting it in the chat.
Okay, perfect. Right
Um,
here. Yep, it's April B, and then it's 1982 dot wixsite.com / where to go? Okay, / my hyphen SITE. Of course, we will definitely put this in the YouTube channel so you don't have to remember this. We're used to just clicking on things, so we will make sure that we put this in the chat or in the YouTube so you all can see it. It'll be in the description. Um, now, do you have an actual YouTube channel describing these books or anything like that?
no, I don't have a YouTube channel. I do have an Instagram,
Okay,
but I'm not on it often, but yeah, the site has like all the information for the books, because it's specifically for the books that I wrote.
okay,
And
okay.
the one eventually I have other books up there because there's a couple more that I'm writing,
Oh,
but those are the ones that I have, and the Purple Crayon's the next one that's going to be published. So
okay, okay. Well, that sounds good. Now, do you have desire or intention to animate these things?
I'm hoping to.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay,
I'm hoping to. I think the flower garden, I actually have that. Um, um, I'm putting that in like a little storytelling form where I
okay,
have like characters reading it, what I'm reading it, and then I have like it kind of acted out a little bit.
okay,
But I have to finish that one up. It's still in the process of being worked on.
okay.
It's actually a lot of work to do with the animations.
Oh,
And then eventually with the Afro Tactile books, the No Mystery, like No History, I want that animated or like some kind of like YouTube videos form in a way. So that's something I want to work on too in the future.
Okay, okay. With all the different technology, I think that you would be very successful in making that happen. Talk to us about the person who did the illustrations or the drawings for "There's No Mystery, Like No History." Who
All
did
right, yeah, so for that book, getting illustrations in America is actually really expensive. And so I was trying to figure out how to get them more cheaply, and I ended up doing it on Fiverr, which you can get illustrators from all over the world. And so I remember like looking through illustrations. I know what I wanted in the illustrations and my what how I want it designed. And so I was looking through illustrations and I found two. One from Africa, I think it was Ethiopian, and one from Indonesia. And so I remember praying to Heavenly Father because I was going like, okay, I want to support Black people. So I was going to choose the African one. But I prayed to Heavenly Father first, like, who do you think should design my illustrations? And he chose the girl from Indonesia. And I'm
Mm,
like, are you sure? I mean, I think I should support like, blacks of the African because I want to support Black people writing it. But he was like, no, the one from Indonesia. And
mm,
so like, okay, I'll go ahead and choose her then and see what happens. Did my illustrations perfectly, like really beautifully. Like, wow, it's exactly what I wanted. So Heavenly Father knew like the best illustrator for like my book. Flower Garden is interesting because I had for the Yate book, I had a guy from an Arab student from one of the Arab nations
mm.
illustrate it. But I had him originally doing the flower garden, but the way he illustrated, I didn't like at all. And so I was trying to figure out what to do, and I had my father gave me a vision at nighttime of these very vibrant colored pictures that were really beautiful. I'm like, that's what I want from my book. This is how I want them illustrated. It was exactly what I wanted. Well, eventually I had to let go of the illustrator, the art illustrator that I had chosen. And I'm like, who do I have illustrated? And Lord told me the person I gave you that illustrated the mystery book.
Mhm.
And so like, okay, I'll give her a try. Did it exactly what I wanted with the vivid pictures I saw in my dream and vision.
Wow.
And so the illustrator was chosen by our Heavenly Father, and she's been a very excellent illustrator.
Wow. Wow. Well, that is amazing how Yah provides even in that. So now we can look forward to getting more work from you because obviously you are just always
Oh,
thinking.
one more thing I want to mention about illustrators.
Uh-huh.
So, in all honesty, I wanted an African American illustrator, and the first one I chose for like the Fire Garden and for another book was an African American on Fiverr, but she never really got back to me.
Okay.
But I have found like, when it comes to doing illustrations on for Black people on Fiverr, Instagram, or whatever, all of them are from the Middle East or Asia. And I'm thinking, where are the African Americans? And so it's like we're not utilizing sources and taking these jobs, but everyone around the world is profiting off of us except us. And so it's like there's a need for more of us who are artists to utilize that skill to earn income to work for each other. Because I was just shocked thinking, why are there no African American artists anywhere? Like they do African American t-shirts, books, illustrations, everything.
Mhm.
And it's everyone except African Americans. There's
Wow.
some Africans in there, but it's like there's no African Americans anywhere. And it was just amazing to me about that. 'Cause I'm thinking we need to really start doing more with these resources and taking an income to help each other out with these things because everyone else is profiting doing the stuff that we should be doing for ourselves. I don't know if that makes any sense, but yeah.
It makes total sense because, I'm writing a book myself and I refuse to put anything together until I was able to find the proper illustrator. And I did. I didn't do my book yet, but I found this young lady about 2 months ago because I saw her work and I was like, she is the one that's going to do it for me. So I'm happy to know that all I have to do is write the book now because I like her work and I will be utilizing her. But you're absolutely right, and that's how it is for us historically. Like we just kind of lay down and let everybody do everything else and profit off of us, and we just are just sitting back and chilling out and just happy with complacency. But we got to continue to pray for our people. That's the thing. Now, April, is there a way that people can support your work outside of purchasing the books? Do you have a Cash App or some sort of other uh, digital mechanism that they can just give you money if they want to?
No, I don't have any of those things.
Okay. So the best support they could do is by buying the book, right?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. All right. Well, I think that we are done. Unless you have something else to contribute to the people, we're going to go ahead and just shore up our conversation here. Do you have anything else to tell the people?
No, that's all. Thank you.
Okay, well, we definitely thank you for sticking around and talking with us about your work. We look forward to coming together with you again soon to talk about your new work. And we'll definitely be praying for you and all that you're doing because you definitely have your hands to the plow. And we see that you have Yah's children in mind. And I believe that He will bless your work. So, we thank you for all that you're doing. And like I said, we look forward to talking to you again soon. Okay.
Right.
And we will also go out on our scripture, Philippians 4:8. Finally, brethren, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are of good report, if there be any virtue, and if there be any praise, think on these things. All right, you all know I'm your sister Cece, and of course, you've been listening to LRP Radio, where Yah is always first. Make sure you check us out on YouTube as well. You have everything you need concerning the artists and everybody in the industry that is here is supporting Yah's work, the work that Yah has included. So just thank you all for listening. We look forward to talking to you again soon. Make